Hello, everybody. I'm certified natural healthcare practitioner Erin Thole, and I'm very excited because today we are talking with Rachel Plympton, and she is a therapist. So whenever I'm working with clients, I'm always taking into consideration stress management, emotional health, making sure, someone's nervous system is really balanced and healthy because what we're feeling emotionally really trickles down into our physical health. And there's a lot of research that shows that. So I wanted to do this very special episode with Rachel so she can share with us some of her insights and takeaways and big tools that people can use in their day-to-day life. And then just kind of some things, that you might want to talk to a therapist about and just give us some insight into what she's seeing in her practice these days. So thank you for coming, Rachel. I appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Where do you want me to start? Anywhere?
You can start wherever you want. The world is
Okay.
your oyster.
Yeah, so I am a therapist within a practice here in Cypress, Cypress Counseling and Wellness. And so I work with maybe about seven or so other therapists that range in kind of all modalities and things we focus on. Um, but one of the big things within our practice and what I love talking with Erin about is this wellness part, right? Because mental health and seeking counseling and being able to kind of work through and process what's going on in your world is huge and hugely beneficial, both for kids all the way up to adults and couples. But there is this other component of wellness, right? Like really taking care of our bodies so that when you come to counseling, you can really take fruit in using the skills that we talk about, the mindfulness that we talk about, right? Because your body and your brain feel clear to be able to receive that kind of stuff. So, yeah, so that's kind of a big focus we do here at Cypress Counseling and Wellness. We do a variety of kind of modalities. We do talk therapy. We do neurofeedback, which is focusing more on retraining the brain and kind of allowing our brain to talk better to each other. We have some clinicians that do EMDR, so eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing, which helps a lot with trauma. And then we have clinicians who work with kids who do some play therapy. And like I said, all the way through adults and couples work here too. And kind of looking at the individual as a whole, working with families and family systems. So kind of just a variety of stuff we do here.
Awesome. Yeah. Can you expand a little bit upon like the neurofeedback stuff and then the EMDR so people are a little bit more familiar with that? Because I think that they're both super, super beneficial therapies. I've done EMDR and I think that it's really awesome. And there's like The Body Keeps the Score. I'm sure you're very familiar with that book. Is a great book that
Yeah.
really talks and a lot about EMDR and the benefits of it for trauma and things like that. So I think it's super interesting.
Yeah. So neurofeedback really it's kind of this more technical, I guess, therapy. I always joke when I talk with clients about it, right? It's the easiest kind of therapy you do because you don't really have to talk back, right? We kind of put it's a whole process, but at the end of the day, right, you're kind of retraining the brain by putting electrodes on certain spots of the brain and watching something on the computer and through this computer system, right? It kind of works to retrain the brain. And so it can help a lot with like depression or anxiety, ADHD, and that kind of stuff. Because again, your brain is either talking too fast or too slow in certain areas. And so what neurofeedback can do is help just get that to work more efficiently, right? It's just helping that again, so your brain can work more efficiently and then everything else can fall into place too. And so with that, we start with a brain map and then we're really able to look at what's going on, how your brain is talking. And then from there, be able to do protocols based on what your brain needs more of or less of. And so we have trained people that are able to look at that and complete those protocols here. And it's one of those things that we look at as like an investment because insurance doesn't cover it. It's one of the modalities that insurance doesn't cover. And so it is an investment, but you can look at it as a way of a lot of times why people use neurofeedback is in replacement of medication. And so it's one of those things.
It helps go to the root of the issue instead of just masking it and trying to like force that round peg into a square hole kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you're
so
like,
it's
as someone's doing that, so you do your base scan to kind of see what their brain is looking like. And then as you're going to like through all the therapies, do you do it at different marking points throughout their time doing the neurofeedback so you can see like the progression? Obviously they'll feel a change too, but just
right.
so you can
So you'll usually feel some changes, and then you start out pretty consistently, like 2 to 3 times a week you would do neurofeedback, and then again it's like you're training the muscle in your brain. It's like when you go work out, right? Like you're building that muscle, and eventually you'll be able to go down to 1 to 2 times a week, and then once a month, and then you just come up for maintenance, right? And so again, it's looking at really allowing your brain to talk how it's meant to talk to itself, and how the neurons are supposed to kind of communicate to each other. So you start and you go through time, and through there we're able to see on the computer screen like what's really happening, and give some feedback to when it's happening, so or after a few sessions. So and then EMDR really it started with it really came to help people with trauma and PTSD, and it's really grown from there to really be able to help people with a variety of things too, even some anxiety and depression and addiction and that kind of thing. And how I kind of always explain it with EMDR is we all have memories, right, that come in, and I think of our brain as like a filing cabinet. And if your memory gets processed accurately, properly, right, it gets integrated and it gets into this filing cabinet, and you get to pull from it when you need to, right? We learn from the experiences or the memories, and it kind of feels, okay, that was in the past and this is the present. So it's in my filing cabinet, and I'll get triggered necessarily by the memory. What happens when we don't process or integrate a memory into that filing cabinet? I kind of say it hangs out in like this memory abyss. And so then when we get triggered in the present moment, it triggers this memory that's not been processed, and it kind of makes you feel like you're back in, even though it's not the same memory. It may just trigger sensations or smell or whatever, and so you get triggered by that memory. And what EMDR can help do is put that memory into the filing cabinet. Use your thinking to move it into where it's supposed to go in the filing cabinet, instead of kind of just hanging out here and being at risk of being triggered by something you see or smell or hear or feel. EMDR can help move it into the filing cabinet.
Okay.
That's how I kind of
That's
share.
a great way of explaining it. I'm going to use that from now on, because I never know how to explain it to people. Like every once in a while, I'll bring it up to a client if, we're talking through some different things that they've been through and stuff like that. And I'll be like, I feel like this would be a great therapy for you. And I'll kind of let them know a little bit about my experience, and then, refer them to the Body Keeps a Score book and be like, learn more about it there, because I'm not good at, regurgitating information about that, because it's not my area of expertise. So, which is why I need people like you. So,
but I mean, and so our body holds trauma, right? And so again, I think that just incorporates to how much what you do too mimics the two, right? Oh, I think they can mirror, or they can just go so hand in hand together, right? When you do EMDR, it does help move the memory over, but it's still stored somewhere in the body, right? We can help process it through, but there's probably still some nutrition body stuff happening as well that I think,
Will help. Yeah.
again, looking at it as a whole.
Exactly. Getting the
Yeah.
cells healthy and all that stuff can help
Mhm.
probably make the EMDR or the neurofeedback like work better.
And talk therapy too, right? Because
Yeah. Anything.
if
Yeah.
all the things, if I'm feeling better and feeling more clear-headed, right, then I can really take in what I'm learning in therapy or the skills that we're practicing, or right, my body is more apt to retain that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of thinking of what I feel is a good example for that. Last week I did a video with the client, Stacy, and when she first came to me, she had like crippling, like debilitating depression and anxiety where she was on a medical leave from work and just having suicidal thoughts and, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she continued with her therapy, obviously. And then we did a lot of testing with her to figure out like what is going on within the ecosystem of her body, and found like different hormonal things and ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
things that were going on where I'm like, we know through scientific research, like if you're estrogen dominant, your risk of depression is so much greater. And then if you have a lot of food allergies and sensitivities, that can increase inflammation, and that can also put people into a depressive state, especially
Mm-hmm.
with gluten issues, because people typically think of gluten as like a gut issue, but that's because that's the first area of the body where it was like researched as an actual, physiological problem. But celiac of the nervous system is actually much more common than celiac of the gut. So a lot of people with depression and anxiety actually have celiac disease, even though they don't have like gut dysfunction symptoms. And so
Mm-hmm.
we can test for that and figure out, is this part of the issue? Because obviously, like, as I'm sure you're well aware and you work with us every day, events that happen in our life like play into our mental state for sure. 100%
Mm-hmm.
have to tackle that as well, but
Right.
also looking at and coupling that, talk therapy and the different therapies that are available through you with
Yeah.
the physical component just kind of doubles down, I guess, on what you're
Right.
doing and helps a person to get better faster.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting, like the crossover.
Yeah, and I think you kind of said it earlier with like neurofeedback, we're getting to the root cause. And even in neurofeedback, when we do neurofeedback, it can be, there can be some coaching and some skill building along the way, right? When we know people are struggling with anxiety, right? Because we do have to learn to feel and manage our emotions. It's not like we like, anxiety serves a purpose for us, right? We just want to be able to manage it so it doesn't interfere with our life, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so just like neurofeedback kind of gets to the root cause, and then we can help supplement with skills. And talk therapy is the same. Getting to the root cause of like, is there more going on in the body that I can't, as a psychotherapist, as a talk therapist, I can't get to because that's not my expertise, right? And I can't see what's going on in the body.
Yeah,
I could just get what they share with me, right? And we can work through what's going on and learn skills, right? But getting to that root cause. So again, I'm not working against something I can't see or fix at the time.
yeah, yeah. Which is why this is such a great like
Mm-hmm.
combination right here. So that's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and it's something I really appreciate about our practice, right? Is we do look at the body as a whole, right? It's not an individual, segmented, compartmentalized
yes,
system.
so important.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so it's good to work in a group that gets that and understands it.
for sure. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
And I think with kids too, a lot of times, and I think you and I have talked about this, right? With kids, a lot of times there's a lot more going on in the body, right? That
mhm.
creates behavior issues, um, or that may exacerbate anxiety or depression, right? Again, as on our side, right, what we can do is help validate and support and walk kids through what's going on in their world, which has value, um, and give them the skills to be able to manage whatever they're feeling or going through. But at the same time, again, it's looking at, even for kids, what's going on inside of them,
Yeah.
um, that we can couple with, okay, I'm not working against something, right? Here's what's going on, and let's get that under control and give them the skills and the tools to be able to manage the things that come.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And they're just developing so quickly, it's
Mm-hmm.
rapid fire. And they're exposed to so much more now than they were, like when we were kids and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it's kind of like brain overload. Um,
Mm-hmm.
with like social media and things like that. Like, I just feel like kids are stressed out and growing, like thinking that they have to grow up so much faster now to kind of their version of keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So,
Well, and yeah, there's our brains can only hold so much as adults, right? And then kids whose brains are still forming until our mid 20s, um, to be flooded with all the things that are out there, right? Because we don't really have a stoplight of like when you can always access anything. That
yeah,
can be a lot for kids. And I think it can add to the overwhelm and the stress that they may feel on top of already being a kid and how hard being a kid is.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So I think people kind of downplay that because they're like, what do you have to worry about? Like, you go to school, you play with your
mhm,
friends. It's like, but school is like their work, it's
mhm,
equivalent. So that becomes stressful. And then so many kids, depending on whether they go to school, are like bogged down with tons and tons of homework. And so then they're doing that
mhm,
after school. So it's like if you had to take work home with you every night and
mhm,
work after you worked,
mhm,
it's just too much time. And then they're not able to unwind,
mhm.
efficiently. And then they're bombarded by social media and all these other things these days. So it's just like, yeah, that's stressful. Like, it's not a footloose and fancy free kind of life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And as much as I always think it's an interesting thing to kind of think about, right? We are, as a human, right? We want to feel connection and be connected. That's just what we were born to do. Um, and I think social media and YouTube and all the things like can create this false sense of connection, that I think that ties in potentially to why some teens feel lonely or depressed or anxious, right? Because there's this false sense of I'm connected to all these people on social media, but I don't have that like physical connection.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
still not getting
and so it can be hard to navigate as a teen because it's just everybody's connected
Mhm.
digitally, which has its pros and cons, or it has its pros and its cons. But yeah, so I think it can be hard. And again, learning how to manage emotions as kids, even as adults, like knowing if we have the ability to manage what we're feeling to be able to model that for kids, right?
Exactly. Like,
Can be hard.
yourself kind of thing is that's a
Yeah.
challenge. Like, that's a challenge,
Yeah. It's hard.
you want your kids to, I think every parent, every generation, like, wants their kids to be better, wants to do more, give more to their kids than what they had for
Mm-hmm.
themselves, even if they had, like, decent upbringing and stuff like that, you still
Yeah.
like improve upon that. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like this whole reparenting thing, like parenting yourself and learning how to regulate your emotions while
Yeah.
you're teaching a little person how to regulate their crazy emotions,
Yeah.
enough to put
It's
someone in
hard.
therapy, like, just as an adult.
Yeah. But I think that's the power, right, of therapy sometimes too, is realizing, is kind of validating it. Yeah, it's hard, right? We have to learn how to regulate. Maybe we didn't get that as kids ourselves, right? And allowing space and grace for yourself of like, okay, I'm not great at this, right? Like it's hard to regulate. My daughter becomes dysregulated. Sometimes I do really good at staying regulated. Other times I don't, right?
Yep,
We're
same.
human, right? But it is a big part of what we try to do um, in therapy is help people learn those skills to regulate so that they can have fruitful communication and relationships with anyone in their world, right? So
Which is good. And I think it's really, really
cool.
good that therapy in general and all these different modalities of therapy are
Hmm.
becoming more accessible, and that the
Hmm.
stigma that was once attached to therapy is kind of going away, because
Hmm.
I feel like, let's say my grandparents' generation or even my parents' generation, like now they're kind of like, okay, yeah, therapy isn't just for crazy people that
Hmm.
need to be in an insane asylum. Like it's for everyday people that just need to process, need some
Hmm.
help, like just, processing what's in their mind,
Yeah.
it's so important
Hmm.
for everyone.
Yeah, just navigating what's going on. And so I do, yeah, it is becoming much more mainstream, so to speak, right? To where people don't feel like they have to hide it as much. I still hear it a little bit. It's from teens, maybe more, right? That they feel like there's still a stigma, right? Something's wrong with me if I go to therapy.
They want to fit in,
Um,
I guess,
yeah,
which
it's part of that connection.
makes sense, but so many kids are in therapy. Like I talk to so many of my friends and they're like, oh yeah, my kid did play therapy at this age, or, my
Hmm.
kid's babysitter will be like, I loved play therapy when I was a kid, and she'll tell me little stories about things. And I'm like, okay, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. So it's like proactive parenting, I think, is becoming
Hmm.
more and more. And so if kids, yeah, they want to fit in and stuff like that, but I think sometimes they'd be shocked to know like
Hmm.
how many of their friends are in
Oh,
therapy,
for
have
sure.
been in therapy before.
Hmm. Yeah. I kind of tell some of my high school clients, right? I think a lot of them feel like they're in this boat all by themselves, and like what's happening to them is only happening to them, right? Like I only feel this way, but really everyone in high school is in their own little boat feeling the exact same way, right? We just all need to get in the same boat,
Yeah.
and just know that we're not alone kind of in how hard life can be sometimes, and especially when we've had past struggles that add to that, right? That just knowing that that has an effect on us as people and as humans, and especially if we didn't have the skills to be able to handle it, it can stick with us both in how we think about ourselves, how we think about the world, and then also from like your point of view, as a functional practitioner, like the body holds on to that, like your gut will hold on to it, or your cells will hold on to it, right? It does stick with you, in more ways than one.
Yep. For
So
for sure.
yeah.
Hey, do you do your appointments all in person? Do you do some Zoom? Are you able to work with people across state lines? Like
Mhm.
what's that look like?
So a lot of our practitioners here will do in person and virtual. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think everyone can do virtual. Um, I think kids can sometimes be hard to do virtual,
Yeah.
as not everybody here works with kids. I work with kids, and there's a couple other clinicians that work with them. It's not my preference to do virtual with kids, but we can make it happen. I think all our clinicians are licensed, or for the most part are able to only practice in Texas, so not across state lines, just based on licenses. But we can do virtual, or in person.
Okay.
So
Fantastic.
yeah. Um,
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you
Mhm.
being here
Of
today.
course.
And
Thank you for
below this
inviting me.
video, of course, below the video, I'm going to put all of your contact information, your website.
Okay,
So if people want to reach out,
perfect.
they can. If someone, because I work with people all over the country, so if someone has
Mhm.
a question for you
Mhm.
about like how to find someone in their area and stuff like that,
Yeah,
is that something that you can help with, or do you have like some advice
definitely try.
you can
I can
give?
definitely try. Yeah,
Okay,
I can definitely try. If they're in another state, to try to connect them with someone or kind of guide them in the right way. Um, we can definitely try. Can't say I will be able to do it for sure, but
yeah,
yeah, we can try.
awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you
Yeah,
being
of
here. All right. If
course.
anybody has any questions for Rachel, just check out her information below. And again, if you have any ideas for topics that you want me to cover, just shoot me an email. And we'll get it on the schedule. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oops, I almost ended the meeting instead of the recording.